Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scholars in the Spotlight, the show where you get to hear first-hand insights, tips, and tricks from students that won this year's WWDC Scholarship. Joining us today, we have sneaker reseller aficionado, developer and creator of Build a Piano, winner of the 2020 Swift Student Challenge. Please welcome Aryan Nambiar. Aryan, welcome, and thanks for being here with me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, as always. So, Arian, your submission is called Build a Piano. Why don't you give us an introduction to the project and how it works?
Yes, so I think my submission for this year for the 2020 WWDC Swift Student Challenge was an interactive playground called Build a Piano. So basically, I structured it as it was kind of like an introduction to the UIKit and AVFoundation frameworks. And it was basically like an interactive tutorial on where you started to build your own piano key visually and then you connected it to audio using AV Foundation to play it. And I think it had like 4 pages or so, and it kind of just gave you a basic tutorial, and then at the end you were able to use the piano you built to play some popular songs.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I played with the playground. Like, I really like how you use the interactivity that Swift playgrounds give us to create the experience of like building a piano. I mean,
Yep.
like the ability, like you have to go through the different pages and write down the code and the different colors and all of that is was really cool.
Yep, thank you.
What inspired you, or how did you arrive at this idea?
So, I mean, I started like trying to think of ideas for like a couple of months earlier this year before the entire pandemic happened and the in-person event got canceled. But I couldn't really think of anything. So after it got canceled, I kind of just gave up. And then when they suddenly announced it at the beginning of May again, I kind of had to scramble to think of an idea because I had no idea what to do. So I started kind of just thinking about like what I do in like my free time and like how I could incorporate stuff that I've done before into this project. And something I've done for like the past 12 years since I was 5 was playing piano. And I thought, oh, this could be a great idea for how to like combine like two things that I'm interested in, obviously Swift and playing piano, and make it into one submission for the project.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a great way to come up with ideas, like to take other hobbies you might have or other interests and bring them to code. It's a really awesome idea.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's probably the best way I think of ideas for almost everything I do.
Yeah, like incorporating all those other aspects of your life and bringing them together through code must be really cool. So the playground is written as an introduction to UIKit and AVFoundation, right?
Yep.
So I guess you have experience working with those frameworks before.
I've actually never done anything with AV Foundation. UIKit you kind of have to use to build apps unless you want to use Swift UI, but most people use UIKit. So I had experience with that coming in, but AV Foundation I kind of had to learn for myself. I mean, nothing that was in the playground was too complicated since the whole point was to provide a brief introduction, but I think it was still pretty cool like learning kind of how to use an entirely new framework just for the submission.
Oh, that's really great. Yeah, like having to learn a new framework must be really cool and challenging in some way, like for this mission in particular.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the challenges I kind of ran into really was kind of like I use the Swift Playgrounds app for the Mac to develop it, but I kind of had no experience with playgrounds before, and I found it super difficult to make stuff like multi-page playgrounds because I'm not really sure how they handle the entire thing, but I wasn't able to see the code like within files itself. So I kind of had to code the entire thing manually. So something I would also recommend is like learning how to make Swift playgrounds before the submission period starts because that was really something that I had a lot of trouble with. I probably spent more time configuring my playground to actually like work properly than actually coding it.
Oh yeah, I mean the playground apps, they are really cool. They bring us a lot of potential for like primarily to like beginners in code and
Mhm.
like with the iPad app and all the examples like for children with the games and all of that.
Yep.
But yeah, working on this kind of submissions, like coming from Xcode to Playgrounds, is really difficult.
Oh yeah.
Like it has a whole new structure, and it's a little bit buggy.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty buggy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But well, it's part of the challenge, right?
Yeah, of course.
Navigating through Swift Playgrounds.
Yep, for sure. All the winners had to do it.
Yeah. So this is your first time as a WWDC scholars,
Yep.
and I want to know, what did you think of the whole experience? Like, we talk a little bit about developing the
Mhm.
project and all of that, but I want to know your general experience.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, this year was a little bit different because of the entire thing with the pandemic. But I think especially this year, kind of they like. I'll guess I'll start from the beginning with the entire like application process. So this year, kind of I guess they kind of dropped it on us on surprise because like nobody was really expecting them to have it this year, especially because normally they announce it in like March, but this year they announced it all the way in May. So I kind of had to start scrambling to get like a project ready to go. And I think after submitting, obviously, we got our results halfway through June. So after that, I think we had 1 week to like I guess prepare for WWDC. So this year, we got a jacket, which was pretty cool. We got some nice pins, and we got I guess kind of like a letter from Apple, which was also nice to see. And I guess during WWDC week, obviously we saw the keynote along with everyone else. But one of the main things that was available to us was we were able to schedule sessions with Apple engineers and people who work at Apple, and those are definitely some of like the best things. Like I apparently you can do that during normal, like when you go there in person, you can also do the same. But scheduling one-on-one sessions with Apple engineers is definitely something I would recommend 100% if you win, because you get a lot of good advice. Like for example, I signed up for the App Store, two or three different App Store one-on-one meetings because I'm working on a music related app. So they gave me a lot of good advice on what like how to adhere to their guidelines and some good advice for how to market it. So that's definitely something that was probably for me personally this year. That was my favorite part of the entire experience and something I would recommend to everyone who wins in the future.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. Like, I heard about these labs and all of the, like, talking with the engineers, and it can be a very meaningful experience.
For sure.
You're getting insight from the very core of Apple, and the people that are, like in your case, in the App Store distribution, they are working all day about that, and they are experts in their field.
hmm
That's really cool. And this year, the scholars, they didn't get to travel, but like the experience was still there, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think they did their best to give us as good of experience as possible, considering like the times we're in right now. Especially, they didn't really have to do this, so just the fact that they did is like something I'm super grateful for.
Yeah, for sure. Like, they are getting out of their way to make this happen, and I'm sure that, like, in the physical event, you have these labs,
hmm
but I don't think they are at the scale that they were this year.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, there were a lot of labs this year.
hmm
But yeah, that's really cool to see Apple, like, integrating the scholars, even so in this context.
Yeah, for sure.
So now that you have won a WWDC scholarship, what are some tips you will have for future students that want to participate?
Yeah, so I think the main thing I would recommend is first of all to learn how to use playgrounds properly before the submission period opens. Because I mean, I think almost every single year, at least for the past few years, they've kept it pretty constant. It's kind of like an open format where you can make whatever you want using playgrounds. So if you're learning Swift to apply for this, make sure you learn how to use playgrounds properly because especially they change it a lot every single year and there can be some of the guides, like for example, like when I was starting to do this, some of the guides that were released just like 2 years ago like weren't as applicable anymore to actually like making a playground in 2020. So learning how to make a playground is super key and it saves a lot of time. I like I mentioned earlier, I spent more time actually like configuring the playground and then actually coding the piano part of the playground. So that's something I would recommend, and I think something else I would recommend is obviously there are people who learn Swift like during the period, but like it's very iffy and your project is a lot more likely to get accepted if you learn Swift before and you kind of like know what you're doing so that you can spend the most time making your playground as good as possible. I think the third thing I would recommend is obviously just having an idea beforehand. I wasted probably like 3 to 4 days just trying to think of an idea because I wasn't prepared. So, I mean, yeah, I guess the main theme is just be as prepared as possible before the submission period starts, because in that case, you can just make the best playground possible and maximize your chances of getting in.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, preparation is the key, right?
Hmm.
You can do it, but you can't expect to win. Like if you get up the day they announce the challenge and say, "Oh, I was interested in participating in this, so I will start learning Swift UI now."
Yeah, for sure.
So put a little bit of work before, like 1, 2, 3 months before. Like be prepared and
Hmm.
be ready to show your knowledge and not incorporate knowledge in that 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, now that WWDC is over, like I want to know what other projects you have in mind. You mentioned a music focused app, and I saw that you have been working on a widget for Spotify.
Yes, so right now I'm working on my first app that's hopefully going to be released on the App Store called TuneTrack, and it's essentially an app that gives you that like shows you all of the data that's available like for your listening habits to music. So right now I've got Spotify and Apple Music built in, and Apple Music essentially kind of gives you like, oh, here's a list of all the songs in your library, and like if you select a specific song in the app, you can see how many times you've played it or how many times you've skipped it. And there are other apps like this that already exist on the App Store, but I think what makes TuneTrack different is that it's like the first app to support Spotify. So, like you mentioned, I am also working on like a now playing widget for Spotify because I hadn't really seen anyone else working on something like that. So, that's also going to be bundled into the app, I guess, like where you can configure, oh, like on your home screen, there you can just have like a 2x2 widget that just shows, oh, now playing, say for example, like Shape of You by Ed Sheeran. And yeah, I think that's about it. That's the main project I'm working on right now.
Oh, that's really cool, man. Like having all that statistics.
Yeah, and you can like make playlists with it. And I think personally, having used it the past few weeks, it's helped me rediscover a lot of songs that I haven't really listened to as much versus maybe I listened to them a year or two ago. So I think that's something people will appreciate.
That's really cool. I mean, I think the only similar thing I heard like is the thing that Spotify does at the end of the year.
Yeah, Spotify Rewind. That's actually the inspiration for it because you can only get that in like the month of December, I believe. And I kind of wanted to be able to like see those statistics at other points throughout the year. So hopefully this helps with that.
Oh, that's a great idea, man. So aside of that, I saw you were working like with Aurora's development
Yep.
in the sneaker reselling community.
Yeah, for sure.
So you have a little bit like some tools written in Python.
Yeah, so really, I guess that's kind of something I used to do that a lot. I used to focus on those kinds of tools for the sneaker reselling community. So mainly I worked with like JavaScript and Electron and like desktop apps, or I would also work with Discord bots that like kind of gave you tools to help you like buy like limited sneakers. So I think I guess that's definitely something I do a lot, or I used to do a lot, mostly in my spare time. And it was a project that I think before making apps was kind of my sole focus. So I don't really have any projects planned in mind in relation to Auroras, but in the future, I think I've got a few ideas. So hopefully, I can work on those.
Oh, that's awesome, and that's awesome seeing you like in different fields, right?
Yeah, for sure. I just want to do as much as I can.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Okay, so why don't we close off today's like with your favorite new feature announced at WWDC?
I think this is kind of the obvious one, but I think my favorite new feature is widgets, because there's really a lot you can do with them. I mean, I guess a lot of people kind of thought, oh, this is going to be really interactive and stuff, but I think something that a lot of people haven't considered is even though they're not like very interactive, just being able to present your content on the home screen can really help a lot with people using your app, and it'll really like if you can make good widgets that people actually use on their home screen, I feel like app developers are going to see a lot more like app usage because obviously something big on your home screen and you see something like you're interested in, like say for example, you have an app and you just see a random fun fact that's displaying on a widget, you're a lot more likely to tap it and start using the app than if just the widget didn't exist at all. So I think that's like definitely my favorite new feature in terms of how much it's really going to affect app development in the future.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's going to change. It's going to change how app developers think about
Hmm.
their apps.
For
Like
sure.
it's a new field for different apps to compete for attention. Like now you have like before you have all the other pages of Springboard and you will fight with a cool icon maybe to get a prime spot. But now with widgets it will be
Yeah, for sure.
so it will be awesome. I'm eager to see what other app came up with widgets. Like
Yeah.
I want to see what Twitter does with widgets and what Reddit does.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've seen a lot of good stuff from developers already who are like working on updating their apps for iOS 14. I think it's really going to be something big.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like really big if you compare it with the previous widget.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think that the previous version of widgets like had more interactivity, but they were really hidden.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when working on apps, I kind of just, until like these new widgets came out, I kind of forgot the other widgets completely existed. I never even considered like that I could build something that used that framework.
Yeah, it falls in a similar way to 3D Touch, I think.
Yeah,
I like to compare it like it was a cool feature, like both widget and 3D Touch, but they were hidden.
yeah, for sure.
Okay, that was a very cool talk.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's an honor, man. Hey, that's it for today. I hope that you have enjoyed it and that you learned something. Don't forget to follow the links in the description to play around with Build a Piano. I'm your host, Valentino Cerruti. You can find me on Twitter as @microrex. This has been Scholars in the Spotlight. I will see you in the next episode.